Peace and blessings. This is Brother Asar Imhotep.
Peace, brother.
Peace. Just want to say that I pretty much agree with your guest this evening. And the only, I didn't get to hear the very, very beginning, so I'm not sure if he's addressed this. Two things. One, I just want to ask a question before I go further. The land occupation, since for the most part, even though a lot of the land is not being quote unquote used in the industrial sense, where is one to acquire this land if they are under modern nation states?
Okay, brother, that's a good question. First of all, the borders, when it comes to us as African American people, we have to look at the uniqueness of us. The current borders that exist in Africa were invented by Europeans. So those borders mean to us really nothing, because that was created arbitrarily, that cut through tribes, that they were done in such a colonial manner because of the influence of the Portuguese, the British, the French. So those borders mean absolutely nothing. Now, the land mass, there is, once again, brother, 2.5 times the size of the United States is the land mass, including Alaska, of Africa. Imagine when you just drive across America, there are areas here in America that there is no population, there's nothing there. Look at Las Vegas. The man that created Las Vegas, people thought he was crazy to invent a city in the desert. So when you look at Africa and you really study Africa from satellite imagery, you will find that there are such tremendous areas where there is absolutely nothing. And even if certain areas could be developed, many of those countries have a very small population, a lot smaller than people think. So they could not even occupy their entire country, even if they tried, because there's just too little a population.
But, okay, I understand that, but what seems to be the problem is, regardless if it is being occupied on all fronts, and we know during the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, they put these arbitrary lines. The governments today in Africa operate by these lines. So it's not like we could just come in and say, hey, this, plot of land we're going to take, and it actually belongs to a sovereign nation, today. So whether certain, they have the freedom, and I know this has been an issue for leaders who have been trying to establish United Federated States of Africa, and how they're going to redraw the lines and things of this nature. But one of the things is that regardless, even if we go into Arizona, and there's a whole bunch of land not being occupied in Arizona, Arizona is still a state, and you would have to abide by the laws of the state. So what I'm not hearing is, who would we negotiate, as far as the land, like I know like Senegal, for instance, offered land to the Haitians, saying for them to build there. Now, I don't know all the details. Would it be considered a different nation, or would it just be considered a part of Senegal itself? But in order for us to be able to go over there, we would have to negotiate with the land with the current rulers of the particular areas, even if it is not being occupied.
Absolutely. And we would negotiate with their legislatures. In the end, their legislative process would have to secede that piece of territory to us. But the bottom line is what we're saying firmly is we are coming back. We are going back. It is inevitable. Our ancestors lost that land in a crime against humanity. It's like if somebody steals your car from you and you see that car on the street with a guy driving your car a week later, is the guy going to get out the car and you go to him and say, well, this is my car, I want my car back. Well, I'm going to sell it to you now. So we have to look at the crime against humanity. The Jews stepped back and said they can have Israel because they lived there 2,000 years ago. Our ancestors came away there 400 years ago, and the slave trade almost lasted for 200 years alone. So that land that was stolen from our ancestors is still rightfully ours. Now, the benefit of a nation to secede a small piece of territory such as that, what is the major benefit for that nation? Immediately, they will have access to the African American market. Immediately, they will have political, social, and economic support, not only in our own nation, but even in America, because we will still be dual citizens. There was a lady that said today that she made a comment on Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to America. And she said that she equated Obama did not have a dinner with him, and since he's the head of state, they were supposed to have ruffles and flourishes and all of that. But because of the rift between America and Israel, it was kept at the very low-key state visit. And she said, well, Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to America last week was equivalent to having the leader of Equatorial Guinea visit America. Nobody knows and nobody cares. So when we look for that land, we will make the argument with that host nation. Look at the benefits you're going to get for your population. Immediately, you will be able to purchase. There will be an increase in your GDP because of the products and services that they have to offer. Immediately, if one country announced to the world that they seceded a small piece of territory for the creation of an independent African American nation, that would be global news in a second. The leadership of that country would be hailed as progressives. The world will know who those leaders are. There may be kids named after those leaders. So it is a win-win situation for them. But just because they have a border that was made by someone else, and just because that those borders currently exist, no, that argument does not fly with me. We have the birthright to return. And in the end, we don't owe Africa or Europe anything. We must get that in our mind. We don't owe them anything.
I can agree, and I don't want to take up too much more time so you can get to other callers. Essentially, with the overall thing, I think the issue probably is that you're gonna one of the biggest hurdles is going to be method, But the second thing is, recently I've written a book called The Bacall of North America: The Living Sons of Vitality, and in this particular book, I discuss developing a cultural identity for African Americans, starting with the name. In the future, we'll be doing something called the African American Cultural Development Project. Based on my research, I argue that African Americans do not have their own distinct, unique culture, that we are essentially Americans with Africanisms. Those Africanisms being cultural traits that are traceable to the continent, but over time we have lost the meaning behind the nuances. And I bring this up precisely because one of the things that will be a hindrance to our survival, I think, in the continent of Africa, and I'm not talking about physically, is that even if you get a gang of African Americans over there in Africa, you would essentially be bringing a whole bunch of European-minded individuals. And one of the things that I don't know how familiar you are with Dr. Amos Wilson's Blueprint for Black Power, a moral, political, economic imperative for the 21st century. One of the things that he argues is that one of the reasons why a lot of African American businesses and things fail is because we're trying to do business like Europeans instead of trying to create a parallel industry. and method. And I bring up the whole cultural piece and the development of the culture is because if you don't have a unifying culture to unite the people and to stimulate their creative juices to create the products and services that are economically, that are culturally based, as far as the need and things of this nature, all of our efforts will fail.